In February of 2020, Julian Newman walked into the biggest game of his high school career. Julian and his father Jamie just decided to leave Downey Christian behind and create their own program called Prodigy Prep. They claimed it was built to take on tougher competition and finally prove Julian was a serious prospect. But in reality, it was barely even a school. It was just a manufactured setup that let Julian launch 30 shots a night while his dad called the plays from the bench. And now, Prodigy Prep was facing a national schedule. And that schedule brought him a matchup with IMG Academy, the same powerhouse that embarrassed him by 60 points the year before. But this wasn't just a rematch. This was supposed to be a redemption arc for Julian Newman. After getting embarrassed by IMG and LaMelo last year, it was his last shot to prove to college coaches that he still had something to offer. But as soon as you looked closely at IMG's roster, it was obvious this wasn't going to be a redemption story. It was going to be another slaughter fest. Because this time, Julian was going up against an IMG program that won a national championship the year before. He was going up against Zach Edey, a 7'4" monster who looked like a grown man playing against middle schoolers. And Edey wasn't even the only problem. IMG rolled out a squad featuring 5 future NBA players, and Jalen Johnson, Mark Williams, Jaden Springer, Musa Diabate, and Jarris Walker. Each of them already playing at a level most high school teams couldn't dream of matching. It was the most talented all-around team that Newman ever faced. Meanwhile, Julian was still trying to prove he belonged. His viral highlights and flashy dribbling made him an internet star, but this game? This was about substance, not style, and IMG was more than happy to expose any weaknesses. For the Newmans, this game was everything. For IMG, it was just another day of domination. And as the gym filled with tension and anticipation, one thing was certain: Zach Edey and this starting 5 of future NBA players weren't there to play around. They were there to bury the hype. From the very first possession, it was clear that this was going to be a long night for Prodigy Prep. IMG Academy came out with a purpose. They ran their offense like a well-oiled machine. Sharp ball movement, perfect spacing, and a level of execution that screamed high major basketball. This wasn't just raw talent. This was chemistry, discipline, and preparation. They looked like a college team. Prodigy Prep looked like a JV team. And Julian Newman, he looked like a kid who had accidentally wandered into a men's league game. All those flashy crossovers, deep threes, and ankle breakers that had made him a viral sensation for years, IMG's defense swallowed him completely. From the jump, IMG's long, athletic wings closed every gap. Julian tried to dance with the ball, pull off his signature moves, but there was no space, no openings, no hope. It was like watching someone try to dribble through a maze that kept closing in on him. It quickly became obvious that Julian's bag of tricks, the same ones that humiliated smaller schools and built his brand, were useless in a meaningful game like this. Here, IMG was different. Their defenders didn't fall for fakes. They didn't bite on step backs. They stayed in front, rotated cleanly, and contested everything. Julian kept trying to force something to happen, but nothing did. He was boxed in, and you could see the frustration on his face. Meanwhile, IMG's offense was running a clinic. Whether it was a slick pass inside for dunks, a drive and kick to an open shooter, or a smooth alley-oop off a set play, they did everything with purpose. Every possession felt like watching chess masters tear apart a player who only knew how to play checkers. They moved, cut, screened, passed, and punished. By halftime, the scoreboard was already ugly. IMG led 57-31 at halftime, and you could see it in the Newman's body language. The energy was gone. The defiance had faded. What was supposed to be Julian's redemption game had turned into a public dismantling. If the first half was brutal, the second half was a complete annihilation. IMG shifted into high gear, and the game turned into a highlight reel, but not the kind Julian Newman was used to starring in. Dunks, alley-oops, full-court fast breaks, the game literally looked like the NBA All-Star game where no one actually tries. IMG's players were flying, throwing down vicious jams and playing with the notion that said, "We know we're better, and now you do too." The gap between the two teams wasn't just clearly obvious, it was laughable. IMG had bigger, stronger, faster athletes at every position. Every possession became an opportunity to embarrass Prodigy Prep. Meanwhile, Julian couldn't buy a bucket, and his body language said it all: frustration, fatigue, and disbelief. And Jamie Newman, who had hyped this game as their moment of redemption, was suddenly quiet on the sideline. No more yelling, no more pointing, just silence as IMG ran up the score and ran them off the floor. As the final buzzer sounded on Julian Newman's second straight blowout loss to IMG Academy, the internet wasted no time delivering its verdict. The final score was 99-40. And the craziest part about the game wasn't even the 59-point blowout, it was the Julian Newman crash out and throwing a chair at Zach Edey's face. It was the kind of moment that perfectly summed up the night: rage, embarrassment, and a total loss of control. The same game that was supposed to prove that Newman somewhat belonged instead ended with a meltdown that only confirmed the opposite. It got ugly real fast. Just about every fan was on the court and many got the incident on video. Instead of walking away with respect, Newman walked out making a complete embarrassment of himself and basically ended his already slowly dying basketball career with that one classless move. But back to the story. It was a 59-point beatdown. But hey, I guess they didn't lose by 60 this time. And the craziest part is that the 59-point beatdown somehow still didn't even reflect how dominant IMG truly was, because it wasn't just about the insane point differential. It was about the complete control, command, and composure from the opening tip to the final buzzer. IMG looked like a team that was out there fooling around, because Prodigy Prep looked like a JV team that had walked into the wrong gym. This was supposed to be Julian's chance to prove the doubters wrong. But instead it became the night his critics felt completely validated. Memes flooded Twitter, comment sections lit up, basketball forums, YouTube, and TikTok all echoed the same message: it was over. This wasn't just another loss, this was the final straw. The Newman hype machine, which had run full speed for nearly a decade, had finally hit a wall it couldn't spin its way through. It's funny how Julian and his dad left Downey to have a hand-picked roster and their own prep school, and the result was nearly identical: a 59-point demolition. There were no more excuses, no more blaming coaching, teammates, or exposure. This time, the Newmans had control over everything. And the outcome was just as brutal. The game made one thing painfully clear: Julian wasn't built for this level, and he was nowhere close to the 5-star superstar his highlights had made him out to be. Against elite competition, the viral handles and deep threes didn't matter. They couldn't save him. For IMG Academy, this was just another night, another win, another future NBA showcase. And for Julian Newman, it felt like the end of the road. The noise, the hype, the headlines, all of it had led to this: a second humbling at the hands of the same team. And this time, it wasn't just a loss, it was confirmation of the end of his career. A big part of why this game was so lopsided came down to the sheer dominance of IMG's stars, and the way each one imposed their will on Prodigy Prep from start to finish. Zach Edey was the tone setter. At 7'4", he didn't just control the paint, he owned it. Every time Prodigy tried to attack the rim, Edey was waiting. He swatted shots, altered everything in his radius, and made Julian think twice before even attempting a layup. Offensively, he sealed defenders with ease, finished over double teams, and punished Prodigy's undersized bigs with effortless putbacks and drop-step dunks. Edey wasn't just a mismatch, he was a problem that couldn't be solved. Mark Williams cleaned up everything around the basket. On offense, he was dunking lobs and grabbing offensive boards. On defense, he formed a twin tower nightmare next to Edey. There was nowhere for Prodigy to go. Every drive ended in a block, a contest, or a hopeless floater. Moussa Diabate was everywhere. Whether it was rotating to block a shot, running the break after a rebound, or finishing a transition dunk, Diabate's energy and athleticism popped on every possession. Jarvis Walker, even as one of the younger players on the court, looked like a grown man. He rebounded, defended multiple positions, and hit mid-range shots with confidence. His strength and poise were years ahead of his age. Together, these guys didn't just win, they dismantled. Each IMG player brought something elite to the table, and Prodigy Prep had no counters. This wasn't just a case of one player being outmatched. It was an entire roster of high-level prospects running through a team built on flash and hope. And the scariest part? For IMG, it looked effortless. For Julian Newman, this game was a turning point. He was no longer the YouTube prodigy that could get by with mixtapes and flashy plays. The reality was simple. There's a massive gap between social media fame and elite-level basketball. Julian had skill, but not the kind that could carry a team against top-tier talent like IMG. His ball handling and deep threes made for great highlights, but when it came to orchestrating an offense, playing defense, and leading a team, he fell short. For years, his father had hyped him up as the next big thing, but after this game, the cracks in that narrative were visible for all to see. Fast forward to today, and the paths of these players couldn't be more different. The stars from IMG's 2020 roster have lived up to the hype, and then some. Zach Edey became one of the most dominant college basketball players in the modern era. A two-time National Player of the Year at Purdue, Edey went from being a raw 7'4" big man to a polished, unstoppable force, and eventually a top pick in the NBA draft. Jalen Johnson played at Duke before being selected by the Atlanta Hawks, where he's now a rising young star with elite upside. Mark Williams also started Duke and carved out a role as a shot-blocking big for the Suns. Jaden Springer made it to the NBA via Tennessee, landing with the Sixers, Celtics, and Jazz, and has just landed a contract with the Pelicans. Moussa Diabate went from IMG to Michigan and then to the NBA with the Clippers, and now on the Hornets, showing flashes of athletic brilliance. And Jarvis Walker, the youngest of them all back then, became a lottery pick and is now part of the Indiana Pacers' young core. IMG Academy, still a basketball powerhouse, still sending elite prospects to Division I in the NBA every single year. Julian Newman, he never played real college basketball. If you want to see how his freshman year went as a 23-year-old freshman at Bethesda, that video is linked in the description. He and his family pivoted toward building their media brand, leaning into their YouTube channel, social media presence, and reality show content. But in terms of on-court success, the IMG game served as a harsh turning point. A moment that made it clear just how wide the gap was between viral fame and real basketball greatness. It wasn't the end of Julian's name in the spotlight, but it was the end of any illusions that he could hang with the elite. The night Julian Newman and Prodigy Prep took on IMG Academy wasn't just another high school game, it was a wake-up call. IMG reminded everyone why they're considered the gold standard in high school basketball, while Julian Newman was forced to face a harsh truth. Viral fame doesn't always translate to real success on the court. In the end, this game will be remembered not just for the 59-point blowout, but for the reality check it delivered. It was a clash between hype and substance, and only one side walked away looking like the real deal. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. And let us know in the comments, was this game the beginning of the end for Julian Newman's basketball career? Drop your thoughts below. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.